much write about anything so long as it's sufficiently literary. So, you know, maybe not like The Hunger Games, which is young adult novel genre erasure. But, you know, it is what it is. Hey you guys, I've got my lucky panda earrings on, so I'm feeling fresh and fabulous. Okay, that was terrible. But anyway, today I'm making the follow-up to my very first video in my 5 Hacks for 5 series, where I give you all my top tips and tricks for getting a 5 on a whole bunch of different AP exams. Since I know it is AP season, you guys are grinding for those 5s, and I'm here to help. So the very first AP video that I put up this year was on May 1st, and it was on AP English Language and Composition, and today's video will be on AP English Literature and Composition. This is definitely one of my favorite AP exams just because I'm such an English and writing and humanities person, but it was still, you know, an AP exam. So I had to do a ton of studying and figure out my own tips and hacks for just trying to get the very highest score that I possibly could, and hopefully those will work for all of you too. I just want to say thank you so much if you've been watching all my videos up until this point, especially 5 Hacks for 5, and you guys should definitely subscribe and follow me on social media just to make sure that you don't miss a single video this AP season and beyond. So let's get into it. While a lot of AP classes do unfortunately tend to fall prey to the scourge of teaching just to the test and not really going much beyond that, the very subjective nature of AP Lit, in my opinion, means that for a lot of people in a lot of classes, it can go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and actually teach a bit too little to the test. Of course, this varies a lot from one class and one teacher to another, and your teacher might be great at preparing you for the exam. But a lot do tend to teach the class more like a traditional English class, albeit one that's a lot harder than most. So, if you do have a teacher who is a little bit test shy, then you might end up having to do what I did. Now, I wouldn't have had it any other way. I absolutely loved my teacher. I loved the exam, but we did barely any exam prep at all, and only right at the very end of the spring semester when the AP exam was approaching. But luckily, you guys have this video, which I did not at the time, so that should make it a whole lot easier for you to teach yourself the material. So textual analysis is a big part of the AP Lit exam. And like, by that I mean it's the only part of the AP Lit exam. And close reading is a big part of textual analysis. But what exactly is close reading? You may have heard your English teacher talk about it before, but if not, basically close reading is just looking really closely at every single word in a passage and why the author uses it to help you be better able to answer questions like those on the AP exam, like reading comprehension, literary and rhetorical strategies, the meaning of a word in context, and so on and so forth. Whether you're reading a passage on the multiple choice or the essay section, I would deeply encourage you to use close reading every time you're reading a word. And to do that and make it easier on yourself, you can consistently just ask yourself a few questions. So, why did the author do that? What emotions is the passage making me feel right now? And most importantly, are there any rhetorical and literary strategies in place that are helping the passage achieve this effect? Asking yourself these questions should definitely help set you on the right track. So this may sound a little funky, but a big tip that I used both while I was studying and during the exam was to try and make up my own answers to the multiple choice questions before I even looked at the options. To make it a little easier on yourself, you can just cover the answer choices with your hand so that you don't get distracted by them. And then from there, you just want to make up what you think the answer is in your head before you look at the choices based on just what you saw in the text. Now, it is possible that you might run into some difficulties with this hack if you don't feel like you fully understand the text, but it actually works a lot more than you might think. To really get the most out of it, after you've thought of your own answer, you can take your hand off the answer choices and see which one matches the answer you thought of the best. This really helps minimize distractions or second guessing, which I know it's really easy to fall prey to. So now we get to the essays. Just like with AP English Lang and Comp, there are 3 of them, but they're on pretty different topics than the AP Lang and Comp essays. Now, the first 2 are fairly straightforward. You're just asked to provide a literary analysis of first a prose passage and then a poem passage. Or actually, it might be the other way around, I haven't looked to make sure, but there's a prose passage and a poem passage in there somewhere. Order is negligible. The third essay is a little bit more complex, but we'll get to that in the 5th and final hack, so we're just going to focus on the first 2 for now. Now, it's really easy to write thesis statements for these first 2 essays that follow the 3-pronged thesis format, which is basically where you're saying the author creates such and such effect using this first literary device, this second literary device, and this third and final literary device. And then if you're using the traditional 3-body paragraph format, you're basically using your thesis to say exactly what each of those body paragraphs is going to be about. However, if you really want to kick your essay into high gear and go from a 6 or a 7 to an 8 or a 9, which is the highest score, then you want to make your thesis a little bit more sophisticated than that. So my recommendation is, instead of using your thesis to list the different techniques the author is using, make an argument about what you think the author is trying to achieve. And then, and this is the really important part, explain why that matters. I took AP Lit through the Stanford University Online High School, and whenever we were writing our essays, they would always tell us to ask ourselves, so what? Why does this matter, what I'm reading about and what I'm writing about? So when you're writing your essays, always ask yourself not necessarily what something is, but why it's important. And that'll really help you bring your essays to the next level. So as you guys might know, the third essay on the AP Lit exam is kind of a doozy. It doesn't really have much of a parallel in many other AP exams out there. Essentially what it does is it'll give you a prompt to answer, and it'll be something along the lines of, how does this text show the theme of justice, or honor, or fatherhood? I don't know. It can pretty much be anything. And here's the kicker. The text that you can write about can also be pretty much anything. They'll give you a whole long list of suggested texts that you can write about. Lots of Shakespeare, Virginia Woolf, Ernest Hemingway, all the greats of the classic era. And from there, you can actually also not even write about one of those if you don't want to. You can even just write about a text that you've read yourself. Although there is a really high chance, just given the way that the AP exam is structured and the way that AP Lit teachers teach, that you'll have read one or more of the books on the list. But you can pretty much write about anything so long as it's sufficiently literary. So, you know, maybe not like The Hunger Games, which is young adult novel genre erasure. But, you know, it is what it is. So the prompts are usually going to be broad enough that you can use a lot of different texts to potentially answer them. And the way that a lot of kids go about studying for this is they choose just one book from their AP Lit class to really familiarize themselves with, and then they kind of plan to use that for anything that the exam might throw their way. But my recommendation is to actually familiarize yourself with at least 2 books that you can use, and actually, even better, maybe even 3. While I was studying for the exam, I had initially decided I was going to focus on the Shakespeare play The Tempest for the third essay, but I actually ran into a big problem when one of the practice essays I wrote just didn't have any sorts of themes that were actually present in The Tempest, no matter how hard I tried to shove them in there. So then I also ended up hardcore studying Wuthering Heights and Mrs. Dalloway, which were both also books that I had read in my AP Lit class that year and were sufficiently classic and literary enough to really count and be totally fine to write about for the exam. So that made me feel a whole lot more insured, I guess you could say, because I knew going in there that I had 3 books in my arsenal, and if 2 of them didn't work out, then at least the third was pretty much guaranteed to. So there you guys have it. Like I said, AP Lit was one of my favorite AP exams that I took, but it was also one of the exams with the consistently lowest percentages of people who score 5s, so if you guys are still here, then you should give yourselves a pat on the back. Hopefully these tips will help you guys like they helped me, and if you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell to make sure you're updated and don't miss anything this AP week. Best of luck, you guys. You've got this. Bye for now. But anyway, today but in my class that wasn't it's the only part of the exam. And oh my god. But anyway, today and that makes that, but my recommendation is to actually familiarize. I ran into a big problem while I was studying